Nathan, can you hear me?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us some time on this beautiful Sunday to be with us. We're so happy that you're here. So, my name is Nina, and next to me, I have a very special guest. And if you're joining us for the first time, you might not think that he's that special, but if you've been here a couple times, you're probably wondering, what is he doing here? So, I'm going to let him explain and introduce himself.
Well, very few people think I'm special once they meet me in person, but we're online, so maybe we can keep that illusion going. If you're saying, where have I seen that guy before? I'm Jason. I'm the lead pastor on staff. Normally, I'm up on stage on Sunday mornings, but today I'm excited. I get to be here with you, Nina, and with you guys watching at home for online services here at Hope Church. And the reason why I get to be with you guys today is because today our youth pastor, Michael, is going to be giving the message this Sunday. And if you don't know Michael yet, or if you've never heard him speak, today you're going to get a glimpse as to why the youth ministry he's leading is exploding underneath his leadership. He is just a gifted pastor, and I'm so excited that you guys get to know him a little better today. Well, last week we kicked off this series called Faithful, living with a faith that is full in a world that's running on empty. And Nina, there are so many things that drain
yes,
faith
a lot. Yes.
out of us in our world. And so what we're doing is we're looking at the 5 faith catalysts that if we pay attention to these areas and invest in them, our faith in God is going to grow bigger. And that's what we care about. And that's what we talked about last week, why a bigger faith was such a big deal to Jesus.
Yeah. And you shared an awesome analogy last week. So if you were with us, Jason shared about an airplane and someone riding in an airplane and how someone can be little faith, big faith. Either way, they're both there. One person's asleep. One's clutching the handle. And I will admit that I am clutching. I am the white-knuckled, saying a lot of prayers, maybe a few tears. And, you know, it was really just empowering for me to be like, that's not really how I want to live my life. And it's definitely not how I want myself to be thinking when I'm putting my trust in Jesus, because I know that he has the absolute best in mind for me. And so how can we kind of take that and think about that in our real life? And when we're worrying about things that may never happen, I know I do that a lot. How can we kind of let that go and let God's love for us just sort of wash over us and not ruin the ride and steal the joy? So that was last week, but this week, as you mentioned, Michael is going to be sharing a message, and I'm so excited for this because when we think about how we want our faith to grow even more, a lot of times that comes from stepping into something that we may not be ready for. God's calling us to do something, maybe we don't feel capable, and it's like, do I really want to do this? So I just wonder, Pastor, has there ever been a time where someone's asked you to do something and you're like, I don't know if I'm ready. I mean, that could have been today. Like that could have been this
you're watching
right
it
now.
right now. I was asked to hold a microphone and talk to a camera.
Right.
No, you know, Nina, that for me has been a major faith catalyst, and that's why I like that Michael's talking about it today. Because when I became Hope's lead pastor 12 years ago, I might not have mentioned on my resume I've never been a lead pastor before. But I hadn't, and instantly I was out of my depth. I'd never had to preach every Sunday before. I'd never led a church before, and for most of my journey with Hope, this has been the largest church I've ever been part of. And so I've always been trying to scramble to become competent to do my job, and I've never quite reached it. But God keeps filling in that gap.
Yes.
When I take what I have and I put it in God's hands,
Yep.
He keeps showing up. I even think about that with this building. I don't know anything about real estate or construction or anything like that. But as this church goes forward, God keeps showing up when we trust Him and take what we have and we put it in His hands.
Yes, and His outcomes are always so much better than what we could have dreamt of or come up with on our own. So that's really awesome.
Absolutely. Now, what I'm excited about is that's just one more faith catalyst we're learning about. All series long, we're learning about all these faith catalysts. So I hope you come back for the entire series as we keep adding more and more to understanding how a faith grows big.
Yeah. So 2 requests. If you're new, please type the word new in the chat. because we would love to have a team member reach out to you. We have a gift that we'd love to give you. And if something heavy is weighing on your heart and you would like some prayer, we will reach out to you as well. If you type the word prayer into the chat, and we will reach out privately so that you can share that with us and we can have our team members praying for you throughout the week.
Absolutely, because even when you're online, we still feel like you're part of our church. So if we can serve you, connect with you, pray with you in any way, just let us know.
All right.
We are
Time
ready
to
to
go?
get started.
Yes.
All right. See you guys
Awesome.
inside.
Welcome to Hope. Let's get on our feet. Let's sing together. I was buried beneath my shame, and who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. And I was breathing but not alive, and all my failures I tried to hide, and it was my tomb till I met you. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul, and now your freedom is all that I know. And the old man knew it, Jesus, when I met you. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, sing this out. Oh, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Give it up for our incredible God. That's it. It's so fun to sing together and worship our God like this. Let's keep it going. can see a way I don't. And it makes no sense, but you say that's what faith is for. When I see a flood, you see a promise. When I see a grave, you see a door. And when I'm at my end, you see where the future starts. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. You've been good on every promise, from Eden to Zion, through every dead end and out of that grave. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. And when the world's on fire, it's not like you don't have a plan. And when the earth gives way, on this rock your church will stand. Nothing has ever once surprised you. Nothing has ever made you flinch. And when it all shakes out, the gates of hell don't stand a chance. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. You've been good on every promise, from Eden to Zion, through every dead end and out of that grave. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. You pulled my heart from Egypt. You carved a road through the sea. From all my chains to endless space, the story ends in you. Anywhere we cross that Jordan, look back at where we've been. From all my chains to endless space, the story ends in you. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. You've been good on every promise, from Eden to Zion, through every dead end and out of that grave. I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. I know you will. Father, thank you so much for being our waymaker. Even though there's so many times where we don't know what the next step is, or we don't know what's coming next, you make a way, and we can trust you with that. Thank you so much for the confidence we can have in your love for us. Thank you for your presence here in this moment, that we get to worship you like this. What an incredible morning to do this. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen. You guys can have a seat. Let's check out this video.
Hi, Hope Church. I'm Kathy, and I love getting to be a part of Hope Kids. What's your faith story? When you were a very young child, did you know what Jesus did for you? And how did you feel about church? When you think about the kids of today, what do you want their faith story to be? At Hope Kids, we want the start of every single child's faith journey to be so full of the love of Jesus, and we want their church experience to be a good one. So we get really excited when kids are singing their worship song at home. We love knowing that they had a really good time and they want to come back again. It makes our day when parents get to fully engage in the adult service. Our team even lets us know that their faith is growing while they lead the kids. They're thanking us for the opportunity to come and serve here. We love hearing that your children are saying their Bible verse at home, reteaching you everything that they have learned that morning, and even wearing pieces of their art project all day long. All of these things are happening thanks to your generosity. If you'd like to support the Mission of Hope Church, you can by texting any dollar amount to 84321, going to hopelakecountry.com, or giving at one of the offering boxes on your way out if you're in the room. Thank you so much for making Hope Kids a great place to be.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, everyone who's joining us online. My name is Michael. I am the student pastor here at Hope Church, and I'm really glad to be able to be with you all this morning. For those of you who might not know me super well, here's just a little welcome first day of school fast fun facts about myself. I'm 26. I'm about to turn 27 in a couple of weeks here. I am married to my wonderful wife, Katie. We've been married for a little over 3 years. We don't have any kids yet. We have a couple of cats. They cause us enough trouble for now. And I really love my role of being able to help students encounter the love of Jesus in Hope Youth. And now that's something that I've known for a while. I've known that my role in God's kingdom is to be able to work with students. But every few months, I just have this moment where I feel, a little bit inadequate. For example, as I looked around in our kickoff week here when we started back in September, I just took stock and I saw that we had almost 60 students from 5th to 12th grade running around this building, somehow not breaking any TVs. I saw that we had a double-digit leadership team that I got to steward and be a part of, and I just took a moment and paused, and I was like, dang, I don't know if I'm really cut out for this. I don't really know how to lean into this well. I've never had such a large ministry to be able to lead before, but this is what God was calling me to step into. I felt in that moment, though, like I was a little underqualified and a lot overwhelmed. But I leaned into it anyways. And today, we're all going to explore together what it means to be able to join in God's work around us, to lean in even if we aren't sure if we're cut out for what that will look like. Even if in that moment we feel a little bit underqualified or a little bit overwhelmed by what's being asked of us, we're going to see what it looks like when we push into that anyways. And so here at Hope, if you're just joining us today, we're in a series right now that we started last week that's called Faithful. Not faithful, but it's faith, pause, full. We're looking at what it means to have a full faith in a world that's kind of running on empty. And last week, we took a look with Jason at what faith actually is, and we learned that faith is about what your trust is actually leaning on. It's about the fact that we build our foundation in life on the things that we're willing to lean on, whether it is Jesus, as we hope is the hope here, but also sometimes it's money or it's performance or other things that we're willing to build our foundations on. And we looked at our first faith catalyst, these things that kind of help our faith to move forward, to grow, to become fuller, to become deeper. And last week we looked at just practical Bible teaching. And we talked about the fact that believing in itself can be deceiving, but it's doing that makes the actual difference. We want to be people where we're not just hearing what God has to say in Scripture and believing, yeah, I can get on board with that. I can assent to that. I know that. That's cool, I guess. But we actually want to be people who are doing things with what it is that we hear. And we build habits on what God says, what we hear now in this moment, in the times where things might be going okay, so that when the storms of life do come, and they do come, we don't find that our foundation is resting on sand, but instead on the firm foundation of doing what God has asked us to do. And as we talk about, doing what we read in Scripture today, as we talk about our second faith catalyst, we're going to kick that up a notch. Today, we're going to be looking at a different catalyst of a full faith. We're going to be looking at the ability to trust God enough to step into His work around us in our own personal ministry, even when we aren't sure totally what that's going to look like or how things will play out. Now, most people will delegate skill-specific tasks to skill-specific professionals. For example, if you're in a situation where you need a surgery, you are not going to ask one of our middle schoolers to perform that surgery, are you? No, I hear that just absolutely no. I don't trust them sometimes to, take care of themselves, let alone somebody else with a surgery. No. Middle schoolers, you guys are cool, but you know how it is. We would go to a surgeon, right? That just makes sense. That's who we are. And that makes sense for us normally. It's rational, it's logical. But sometimes we take that to an extreme, where we try to have all responsibility, even the things that we ourselves should be responsible for. We try to offload all of that onto other people, even though there are some things that we need to take care of ourselves. And we take this even to an extreme in a spiritual sense. Now, we have a pretty clear picture in the Bible that we are all on some level asked to join in the work that God is doing in the world of redeeming and reconciling all things to Himself. All of us have some role to play in that. We all have different gifts and talents and abilities and passions. And with that, we also have some responsibilities. For whatever reason, God decided and He desires to have us join His work. And it doesn't have to be things that are absolutely major. You can even start outside our own front door. Because believing can be deceiving, but doing is the thing that makes the difference. And God wants us to be people who are doing things. And yet, when we have those moments, when we have those opportunities where we can help somebody else to encounter Jesus' love and encounter His grace, we try to push those off onto people who maybe we think are better than us in that moment. Or maybe some of us in here have said, my job, I just need to get them to church. Pastor's going to do the rest. He can get them saved. He'll take care of that. Or I see this situation in front of me and I feel like maybe I should do something about it, but I've got a meeting in a half hour. I don't have the time to deal with that right now. Somebody else will step in and take care of that. Or I know this person has a need, but I don't want to really give up my resources in order to meet that need. Somebody else is going to take care of that. Somebody else is going to do that. And what we end up doing is creating a huge bystander effect in the church. We defer these life-changing opportunities to others. And as a result, we end up with a lot of people just kind of looking around at each other, twiddling our thumbs, like, are you going to take care of that? No, I don't really want to. Are you going to do that? No, but we're all feeling okay, I go to church, I'm a Christian, I'm comfortable, I'm doing okay. I've got a nice cushy chair to sit in now, we're doing all right. The chairs are very nice, though, by the way, aren't they? They're if you're watching online, you can see we don't have a menagerie of colors anymore. We've got one color, because all the chairs are here, which is great. But we don't just want to think that right now, we've got our chairs and we have arrived. We're doing good now. We can kind of coast. We don't have to step into anything uncomfortable. We don't want to just arrive. We want to have full faith. We want to be able to have the confidence that in Jesus, whatever it is He's asking us to step into, He is going to be who He says He is, and He's going to do the things He says He's going to do when we step in to what He asks us to do. And so before we go anywhere else today, I want to give you our kind of bottom line. If you don't remember anything, remember this. If you're have your bulletin, there's a few fill in the blanks today, and you can fill this first one in. Our bottom line for today is that our faith grows. We experience full faith, deepening faith, when we willingly serve with compassion, not wait for perfection. Our faith grows when we willingly serve with compassion, not wait for perfection. Because biblically, what we see is that our faith grows when we step into those opportunities to serve and to love those around us and to love those right in front of us, even if we aren't totally sure that we can do what's being asked of us, even if the timing doesn't seem quite right or quite good for us, even if we just aren't feeling up to it in the moment, we step in. And in those moments, our faith grows. When we respond to the things that move us, and when we see God active and at work in those things, our faith grows as a result. And today, we're going to take a look at a story where, thankfully, we aren't the only ones who have dealt with this, who have struggled with this. People have been dealing with this for as long as God has been asking people to join his work. But today, we're going to look at a story where we get to watch the disciples of Jesus take a stab at this question of what do I do when I step into a situation where I don't really know how it's going to turn out. We also are going to get to look at what Jesus even did when he stepped into a situation where he wasn't sure if he could be fully up to task. And so if you have your Bibles with you, if you're following along, we're going to be looking at the book of Matthew chapter 14. We're going to take a moment today. We're just going to read through this whole story, this account all at once, and then we're going to go back and work through it little by little and see what God has for us today. Does that sound good to you guys? Woo, love it. So as context, as we read this again, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 14. We're looking at verses 13 through 21. And as a little bit of context, so Matthew is one of these four Gospels, these accounts of Jesus' life. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This story that we're about to read today, this account occurs in all four of these Gospels. It was something that was important enough that all of them thought that they had to write it down. And so in a context here in Matthew, he was a tax collector. He was really detailed, and so he gives us a lot of these older details that are going on. We see right before this that Jesus has been doing a lot of teaching, a lot of preaching, and then right before what we're about to read, we learn that his cousin John the Baptist, has just been killed. He was beheaded. That came in really clear there. He was beheaded. It was, funny to us. It was sad, though. That's Jesus' cousin. That's his family. He's in a time where he's grieving a little bit. He's in a time now where he's sad that he has this news that his cousin John is beheaded. And so that's kind of what's all leading up to what is about to take place. So let's read through this. This is starting in verse 13. You can follow along in your Bibles or on the screen. So it says, when Jesus heard what had happened, so that's what had just happened. He just learned that his cousin had died. He withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. And when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. And the number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So again, this is that story of Jesus feeding over 5,000 people. This story appears in all 4 Gospels. And I'm going to be going today, we're going to be looking at this account in Matthew. But if you need a little reference, there's also some really good details that come from John's Gospel. John chapter 6 is where you find this account in his story. And so Matthew's account seems to be focused a little more on the interaction between Jesus and the disciples and the serving that was going on. John gives us some details about things that were going on with the crowd and with some other people as well. And so right now what we're going to do is head back to the beginning of this account and dig in. And so come with me back now again to verses 13 and 14. So Jesus had heard what had happened. He had just heard that his cousin John had been beheaded. He's been doing a lot of teaching. He's tired. He's a little worn out. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns, because of course in the moment where we want to be alone the most is where you end up having to deal with the most outside stuff. That just seems to be how life goes. But when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. And so in these first couple of verses, we see Jesus stepping into a truth that we regularly experience. And it's our first kind of point today about what it looks like to join God's work in our own personal ministry. This first point is that God's work, God's kingdom work, is often greater than our capability. God's work is often greater than our own capability. And here's what I mean by that. Sometimes the work that God asks us to step into, those little nudges that we feel of, maybe I need to do something about this, sometimes it just outstrips our straight up ability, our talent in that moment, where we feel like, I know what maybe you're asking me to do. I do not think I am the person to do the thing you want me to do right now. Like, are you anybody else but me, not me, no thank you. Sometimes though, and that's the one we think about the most, is just our own ability to step into what God wants. Sometimes, though, God's work, what he's asking us to step into, just far outpaces our availability, our time, our mental, emotional capacity to be able to step into that moment just where, like we said, if I've got a moment where I think maybe I need to be talking to this person right now, but I've got a meeting in an hour and I don't really want to give up my own time in order to step into this. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know how messy it's going to get. I'd rather I don't think I can make myself available to this person right now. So sometimes it just is greater than our ability. Sometimes it's greater than our availability. And sometimes the work that God asks us to step into is just greater than our attitude in a moment, our temperament, where for whatever reason, we're just thinking, I don't want to. I don't want to step into what you're asking me to right now. I'm coming from a place where I'm upset, I'm angry, I'm dealing with things myself, and you're going to ask me to go and help somebody else? I can't do that right now. But the thing is that we don't learn very well when we are only in situations where we just are constantly crushing it. That's not where a lot of learning occurs in life. Instead, we get better at things when we're actually out of our element, when we're forced to rely on God. And even Jesus experienced that. Now, here in these first couple of verses with what we know now, of course, Jesus is clearly able. He's God. He's able. His ability is not being outpaced by what God is asking him to do. Nobody doubts that. But he's trying to get away right now. He's trying to be alone. He's trying to deal with the things that are going on inside, his grief and his sadness and his tiredness. So his attitude and his mental availability were definitely not where they needed to be if he was going to step into what God was calling him to. And he had every excuse to be like, you know what? I'm sure they'll figure it out. I just really need to take care of things right now. It'll be fine. It wasn't ideal, even for Jesus. God's kingdom work in that moment was kind of greater than his capability. And yet, he had compassion on that crowd. And it said that he began the work anyways. He was able to step into what God had for him anyways. So let's continue reading here in verse 15. So Jesus has started in anyways. And it says that as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." But Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." So notice the contrast here between how Jesus responds to God and how they end up responding to Jesus and God. So the disciples come around. It's late. We learn in John that the Passover feast was coming. So there are a lot of people gathering, a lot of people who are around. They're all very hungry. They've been there a long time. And they see this need is really great. There are thousands and thousands of people here to feed. We don't really see how this is going to get resolved. Can't we just send them away? I'm sure there's a quick trip in the town over. They can grab a burger from the hot bar. They'll be fine. It'll be good. Let's just let them go home. And Jesus says, no, they don't need to go away. Why don't you still step into this anyways, even if you don't see what's about to occur? So Jesus invites them into this. He invites them into this. He had compassion on the crowds, and he invites the disciples to lean into something that they aren't quite seeing yet. Because remember, our faith grows when we willingly serve with compassion, not wait for perfection. This situation was not ideal. The timing was not perfect of trying to do something really cool. They just wanted to go home. But if they had done that, they would have missed out on being able to see Jesus step in and work to allow their faith to grow as they watch God come through. Jesus, on the other hand, was way less worried about how this was going to happen. He knew that maybe the timing wasn't perfect, or maybe he wasn't in the perfect place, but if God was asking him to step in, he was going to be willing, even though the task seemed greater than their collective capability. So let's continue on and see what they do. This is going into verse 17. It says this, so Jesus told them, no, they don't need to go away like you. You give them something to eat. And they're like, Jesus, you're crazy. They said, we have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. Bring them here to me, he said. So the disciples take stock. If you're here in our Nehemiah series, they took an assessment of the reality of the situation, and they brought back the facts. We have 5 loaves of bread, and we have 2 fish, and we don't even know the state that the fish are in, so it's like, maybe we've just got bread. I don't know at this point. But there are bigger things that are at work here, and this is where John gives us some really good facts about the situation. So in John, we find out that they didn't just, find this food on the ground. They didn't just go around, shaking everybody down and taking all their food, but there was a kid in the crowd who happened to have this basket full of 5 loaves and 2 fish, and this kid was willing to offer up everything that they had, even though they didn't know the outcome of the situation. They didn't know how helpful it was going to be, but they were willing to give it up. And this brings us to our second point today. So sometimes, God's work that he asks us to step into is going to outstrip our own capabilities, but our job in this, our job when we decide that we need to step in is just that we bring what we have. Nothing more and nothing less. We just bring what we have. We don't bring anything more. We don't try to fake it or put on a show. We also don't bring anything less. We give all of who we are, as broken as we might be, as inadequate in that moment as we might feel. We bring what we have. Nothing more and nothing less. So this kid brought their food. It wasn't much. The disciples don't see how it's going to be enough, but the kid gave it anyways. And the Bible is full of people who step in with only what they've got, and yet they give it anyways. I think of David in the Old Testament. When he was a boy, he had to face off with a fearsome warrior named Goliath, and nobody really had any armor that would really fit him, and so he brought what he had, and all he had was 5 stones from a stream and a little sling. But he knew that God was calling him to step in, and he was confident in that, and he did so. And in the New Testament, there's a story of this widow who comes to the temple, and everybody's bringing their offerings and showing off how much they've got that they're willing to give, and she brings 2 little coins. But it was all that she had. She was willing to give everything she had, nothing more. She didn't put on a show about it, but she also didn't bring anything less, and Jesus commends her for it. And this kid was willing to give up a lunch. Even if the food didn't seem to be able to do the work, he brought everything that they had, nothing more and nothing less. Because our faith grows when we willingly serve with compassion, not wait for perfection. Jesus doesn't demand us to be perfect or to have the perfect answers or to be in the perfect position or to have the timing perfect in order to join his work. He doesn't ask for that at all. Because if we all had to perfect our talents and our abilities or have the perfect schedule line up before serving and before stepping into what Jesus is asking us to do, none of us would ever arrive. And even those of us that, you see up here, like we aren't perfect. We haven't arrived at all. Like I think that I'm a pretty engaging speaker, but I make really weird faces sometimes when I talk. And my wife has lovingly pointed that out to me, and she's right. It's terrible. I can't help it. Like if any of you have watched The Office at all, like I have a good Jim face where I just make that look to camera like. And the more excited I get, the less I think about it. And so if Katie, if you're watching, I'm really sorry. Just tell me how many and I'll be better. I'm sorry. She's right though, it's bad. Jason is an excellent teacher, but yet he makes too many dad jokes and it's insane. Jason might say he doesn't make enough dad jokes, and we'll talk about that later in staff meeting, but he'll probably make more next week. I don't know. I have leaders that are in our student ministry that joined knowing and very much telling me that they are not good at talking with kids and students, and yet they're here anyways. I have people that have joined our team knowing that they could have made every excuse in the book about time because of where they live and how far it takes them to get here, but they joined anyways. They brought what they had, which was a heart that was moved by being able to help see students experience Jesus' love. And they were willing to step into what God was doing, and God has been moving and working as a result. And here we see that Jesus is slowly showing the disciples what it means to be moved by and join God's work, even when that work might seem out of reach. And so let's continue on and see how this all wraps up here as we go to verses 19 through 21. So Jesus had them bring this food, this not so great food, this kid's lunch for family probably. He said, hey, bring it here to me. And he directed the people to sit down in the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. And now here, the disciples kind of get this close-up lesson, this hands-on lesson as they are continuing to hand out this bread and this fish. They get to see something up close that we get to view now at a 30,000-foot view. And it's our last point for today, which is when we bring what we have, nothing more, nothing less. When we bring all that we've got and we say, yeah, God, I'm willing, I don't know how this is going to turn out, God brings more. When we bring what we have, God brings more than we can think, more than we can imagine. Jesus provides here in a way that nobody thought possible. This willing kid provided the catalyst for Jesus to feed at least 5,000 men and even more women and children, several thousand people. And could Jesus have produced really nice bread and really nice fish from nothing? Yeah, he could have. So then the question is, why even involve people at all? Well, for one, this kid now is having a transformational experience. They were willing to bring this lunch and say, okay, here, use this for whatever you need to. But now God is working in and through them as a result to be able to feed 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people. And the disciples are able to learn from a child that what Jesus wants isn't our polished plans or our perfect logistical layouts of whatever we think is going to go down. He doesn't want that. He just wants our willing hearts. Because our faith grows when we willingly serve with compassion, not wait for perfection. Our faith becomes fuller when we experience God at work in our willingness. Our faith becomes fuller when we stop saying, somebody else will take care of that. And when we start saying, you know what, I don't know where this is going, but I'm going to try. I'm willing to try. God just wants us to see what will happen when we are willing. And we also get to see who benefits when we're willing to step into what God is calling us into. And now that's where this story of feeding the 5,000 ends, but I want to take a moment to read the next couple of verses because it is important here what's going on. And so if you're still following along, this is verses 22 through 24. This is right after Jesus has done this. The disciples are like, there's some different things going on here. This crowd is fed. It's all great. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone in the boat, which remember already had the disciples on it, was a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. So Jesus sent the disciples into a storm. Good old Jesus, you know. It's fun. The learning never stops with God. They just saw him provide. He's like, all right, you're going to see me provide again. You guys will be fine. But what we're focusing on here is that Jesus was grieving. Remember, he had just found out that his cousin, his close friend, had just died. He was grieving. He had wanted to be alone, but he was willing. He had compassion, and he knew that he needed to step into what God had for him in the moment, and he joined God's work even when he wasn't at his best. But then, at the end of all of this, he still took the time that he needed to attend to what was going on inside. It's a both and. And so as we talk here a lot about, serving and joining God's work and being a part of all of that, we're not saying that you need to burn yourself out. Join all the ministries possible. Do all of the things. Don't have a night of the week where you're not doing anything at all. That's not what we're saying. It's not about we want you to burn out, because even Jesus didn't do that. Instead, what we're looking at is just being willing to move, even if we're maybe not quite there. But it isn't about just taking all of the time and burning yourself out, because even Jesus knew he needed to attend to what was going on inside. And so, as we're talking about all of this, just pay attention to that there is space to be able to look at, what's going on and where am I at and how healthy are things that I'm just, able to step into well. But what I want is for us to remember, even more than that, is how all of this whole story began. And it began with Jesus having compassion on the crowd. Jesus had compassion on the crowd, and he entered into a willing space with God because he was moved by what was moving God. He was broken by the things that were breaking God's heart. He saw this crowd, and he saw them not as more tired and hungry people that he now had to feed, but he saw them as God saw them, as people who needed his love and his care. Now, one of the things that I had the privilege to do, I suppose, was to study Hebrew and Greek when I was in college, and it was a slog, I will tell you. Those are some of the only classes I failed because I took Greek and I was like, this is hard, and then I took Hebrew and I was like, I miss Greek. But one thing it did do was cultivate in me a deep love of the languages that the Bible was written in, and the Greek and the Hebrew that was originally written in. And so when I see this word compassion, I got curious about what that would have looked like for them and if it was different than our idea of compassion. And so the Greek word for compassion is a word that is called splagchnizomai. Everybody say splag. Everybody say knidzo. My. Turn to your neighbor and say splagchnizomai. Some of you just laughed. You're like, I can't. Nope, that outstripped my capability right now. I'm not doing that. We're not getting there. That's okay. If any of you could spell it afterwards, I'd give you $1. It's a rough one. It's a rough one. But what it means initially to be deeply moved with love and compassion, but there's a connotation behind it where for the Greeks, they thought that your stomach, your bowels, your intestines, this was like the seat of all your emotion and desire, much like in the Western culture today, we would say, I love you, with all of my heart. They would probably say something like, I love you with all of my intestines. We might laugh. That was what they thought. That was where it was at. And so, when Jesus is moved with compassion by this crowd, it's almost as if he was that in tune with the heart of God, that he was in ache, he was in pain physically for the people as they were, even while he was in his own grief. He was being moved by the crowd. His stomach was upset because of what he was seeing happen before him. Now, the disciples had a little bit to learn about compassion. They were not moved by that crowd. Their stomachs were pretty settled, albeit probably a little bit empty at that point. But they just wanted the crowd to go away. They wanted everybody to take care of themselves. Jesus, however, he steps in with compassion. He didn't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect amount of food to arrive or for the disciples to be perfectly aligned. He stepped in anyways. He joined God just where he was at. Sorry, I keep adjusting this. I move too much for this microphone. It's okay, though. So at Hope, while you're here, while you're experiencing what's going on here, we want you to serve and to be a part of the things that are going on, no matter where it is that you're at, because personal ministry does for us just what it did for the disciples in that day. It helps us both to learn who God really is, to see what happens when God really breaks through, and it also helps other people and it benefits others as we give of ourselves and serve. As we step into these moments and serve other people, it helps other people. And what matters isn't the thing that God is asking you to join. Like, we're not all going to be stepping in and feeding 5,000 people or doing these grand things every week, but simply what matters is that you bring your willingness and that you watch God bring more. There's one more blank if you're following along, taking notes, that maybe you could guess by now. It's compassion, it's not perfection, that moves us to action and moves us towards fuller faith. We can have the most perfect timing. We can absolutely perfect our craft. We can have perfect skills, a perfect attitude and disposition, and it will not matter if we don't allow ourselves to be moved by what moves God. We're not going to be able to step in if we're not allowing ourselves to be moved, to follow those nudges or those promptings to step into places where maybe we normally wouldn't. And we don't need to be burnt out about it. And we don't need to be perfect. We don't have to have it all figured out. We have a God who's willing to teach us, to walk alongside of us, and we see that with Jesus and the disciples here. He didn't yell at them for this. He didn't say, "Why don't you guys get this?" He just invited them along, continued to show them, continued to teach them, continued to be with them. Now for me, I absolutely know that youth ministry is where I'm supposed to be. It's where I'm going to be for a while here. And am I out of my depth? Absolutely, yes, sometimes. It's youth ministry. There are times where I am in over my head. I don't know what's going on. But do I really need to learn to step into what God wants anyways? Yes, I do. Because I've seen that when I'm willing to bring what I've got, nothing more, nothing less, I have seen time and time again, God bring more. And things have happened that I couldn't have even imagined. And I've seen the benefit in the lives of the leaders that are around me and the students that are around us. And so, yes, I'm going to keep stepping in. Even if I feel a little underqualified, even if sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed, I'm going to keep moving forward because I know that God keeps bringing more. And so just as I continue to learn and I continue to grow, one of the things that I tell our students all the time is I'm never going to ask you to go somewhere that I myself am not willing to go. And I'm going to say that to you all as well, that we will never ask you to go somewhere where we ourselves are not willing to go. And so as I give us all a little bit of homework here, just know that I'm just not throwing this at you guys and then I get to go kick back and watch some football later on, but I'm going to be stepping into these things as well. But we all have a couple of things that I want you to consider as we're moving forward from here and learning what it looks like to step into personal ministry. And the first is to just ask yourself, what am I compassionate about? Maybe with our new word from the day, what things kind of upset my stomach a little bit? What things nudge me? What things move me that I might want to be able to step into? Take some time to think about it, talk to a friend, whatever it might be. Are there things happening, whether in your own context or here at Hope, that you find yourself caring about or wanting to do something about? Even just that little nudge of like, like I hadn't really considered that, but maybe I should step into that. Like, pay attention to those things. And the second thing I want you to do is to serve somebody in a small way this week. Again, it doesn't have to be anything big or large, but if faith is made fuller by doing and not just hearing, then let's try to put that into practice. So pay attention to some of those small nudges or the promptings in your heart where you can step into an opportunity to serve and love someone. And then don't wait, don't second guess it, just do it. Step into it, even if it seems silly, even if it seems a little small, or maybe you don't think it's that important. Step into it. Pay attention to those nudges, to that moment of, oh, maybe I should help them. Just do it. See what happens when you're willing. And then the last thing I have for us is that we have an event here at Hope that's called Backstage Pass, and I'm inviting you today to sign up to attend that when it comes up in December. It's an opportunity that kind of pulls back the curtain on all of the things that go on here. You get to go around and meet all of the different leaders from all of the different serving opportunities that we have here, and you can see if maybe there's some place here where you feel a little compassion to step in and serve. And if serving in here in Hope Church isn't your thing, then yeah, let us know. We want to be able to help you find some place, whether it's with the food pantry or serving with Family Promise, or even just taking stock of your own neighborhood and seeing if there are people that are needing help that you're feeling prompted to move towards. All we want is for you to become more aware of where God is asking you to be willing, so that you can begin to see God working in and through you in your own everyday life. So ask yourself, pay attention to those nudges of the things that upset your stomach. Try to just step in and serve somebody in a small way this week, no second guessing. And I encourage you to, out in the hub or online, you can sign up for Backstage Pass, which is going to be happening in December. And now Hope is full of people. It's not just, us who are on staff or paid or whatever, but this is a place full of people who embody this catalyst of personal ministry, who are willing to step into those places no matter where they are at in faith. And so I encourage you to just take a look at this video and hear a story of a couple who is doing just that. Thank you.
Well, we're the Toms. I'm Ryan, it's my wife Amy. We've been married for about 10 years. Been together for about 11 and a half. I moved out to Oconomowoc from Oak Creek back in 2017, just kind of doing life together, I guess.
We've got 3 little kiddos. Tennyson is 6, Sophia is 10 and a half, and Anna is 8. When we moved here, I was kind of in the middle of trying to find a church. We had never gone to church together before. And it was 20 years since I'd gone to church. And when Tennyson was born, adding that 3rd kid was a lot. And I struggled a lot with adding that 3rd kid. And one of my girlfriends said, let's go to this conference. And I was like, whatever, let's go, that's fine. It was a women's conference in Lake Geneva, and I had never seen women loving God and loving each other and worshiping. I'd never seen worship like this. And that was like kind of where I started thinking, I need to do this, because I had a really good, positive weekend where I thought that I could see the light.
As far as I go, I don't have, I guess, the faith that she has. I don't consider myself a Christian just because, I guess, a couple of reasons. One, I'm a born skeptic, and I'm the kind of guy that, show it to me and I'll believe it. And that's wholly true of me. It's good or bad, that's me. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. So the idea of surrendering that, giving that control up, it's happened once before in my life, and it was a very bad situation, and now I try really hard not to let it happen again, even for something that could possibly be very good for me. So Hope is the first church that I've really ever been to where they, I don't want to say they don't care, but they accept you as you are, and they state that. Almost every week, Jason is up on stage saying, wherever you're at in your journey, you're welcome here. Seeing that building go up, from the groundbreaking up to where it's at now, and being a part of that, and being asked by Casey to help set up and design the safety plan for the building, and to, asked to be a leader of the safety team. And that's what I've done all my life. So it's kind of a natural thing for me. So, just the inclusion at Hope is it's fantastic. It's awesome. And I really do enjoy being there.
I'm one of the 3 parking team leads. So there's 5, 2 couples and me. I don't feel like that I lack confidence in general, but I felt like, really, are you here? So then I kind of balked a little bit, and then I thought, well, sure, and I feel so much a part of the church in just 2 years, because it's only been 2 years since we've been consistently going just, to Hope as our home church. I feel like I'm proud of the whole parking team, because we just get to have the fun part. and welcome people and make them smile. And every week I serve, I see new families that I've not seen, and that makes my heart so happy. You know, all of the first impression teams, there's so much value to that. And I would imagine, because we're recently new, that new people come in and they see all of us, and we really are happy that everybody is there.
Absolutely. A huge thank you to Amy and Ryan for sharing their story. It's so encouraging to hear how God is moving in people's lives. And like Michael taught today, when we step into working with God and stepping into personal ministry, we are helping set the table for people just like Amy and Ryan to walk in the doors of Hope Church or meet their neighbor and experience God in really, really great ways. And then they can step up and join God in what he's doing in their lives and in their world around them, and bring even more people into the church family. And through that, the church family grows. Before you know it, we have a room of people like this and folks online, just like you guys watching right now, all worshiping our incredible Savior together. That's what we're going to do right now. So let's get on our feet. We have 2 songs that we're going to sing together. And I know if singing might not be your thing, or music might not be your thing, you might not know the words to the songs yet. You might be sitting at home and like, I'm not singing in my living room. That's totally okay. You can sing along, absolutely. Or you can just use the words of these songs as a prayer to connect to God, to listen to God and see, where is God pointing you? Where does God need you to step up and join him in his work in your world around you? So take the next 2 songs, take this time, connect with God, see what he's communicating to you right now. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who
Thanks so much for worshiping this morning. Yeah, God is worthy of that praise. He sure is. Absolutely. Hey, if you are new with us this morning, or if you want more information on Backstage Pass and to get signed up, stop by the hub out in the lobby or click the link in the chat. We'll see you guys next week to continue the series on these incredible faith catalysts to grow our faith. Have a great week.